Hey traders, Raghee here. Let's get a quick audio and video check in. All right, should be good to go. Hope everyone is doing well this morning. Had a good weekend. Good book, good movie, good show. Any recommendations? Always open to that. And quick reminder that we have tonight at 7 p.m. Of course, it'll be recorded, so don't worry about it if you can't make it, but 7 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have the special session on what you need to know before the two major catalysts this week, FOMC and OPX, or options expiration. I'm going to walk through the macro of the rate decisions and what's expected for the year in terms of the September, October, and December meeting. We're going to walk through setup criteria for OPX, so that'll be tonight at 7. So for those of you wanting a little bit more detail on how this OPX works, why do we care, right? Why do we even care? We'll be talking about all of that. For me, I cleaned up the office. You really can't tell, but did some major cleaning up here of the office. We're going to be ramping up a lot of the content that I'm putting out. One of them happens to be, if you notice, we did that last week. How do you trade the first hour of the day? And I've been putting that out every day, and I'm going to continue to do that. I've been enjoying doing a quick recap. I do it anyways in my office, and I thought, why not talk through my morning day trading recap? So that'll be something you can look forward to being sent out every day. Awesome. All right. So, okay, Don't Chase. Was that the one with Denzel? I'll check it out. I think I saw it on Netflix, if I recall. Excellent. Okay, so let's get to work, shall we? Now, we know Monday can be tricky in terms of the start of a new week, all sorts of new information that traders and investors are thinking about, parsing through. We know we have the FOMC meeting and the press conference on Wednesday at 2 p.m. That's the announcement. And then at 2:30, which is going to be the more important of the two events, that's going to be the press conference, because it is basically fully discounted that the Federal Reserve is going to cut rates. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Now, this is not my gut, right? What do we do in this room? It's always about data. And if you take a look at the FOMC Fed Watch from the Chicago Mercantile, I love that they do this. It's fantastic. And you'll see here for the September meeting, expectations are for 96.2% that we're going to see a rate cut. Now you might say, well, Rog, why is it 100%? Because the spillover now, you can see here, the spillover has landed in the very, very almost improbable, but it's factored in, half-point cut. So this is the quarter-point cut, and we have a 3.8% expectation for a half-point cut, which is to say, statistically, it's not really likely, but it's not as if there's any hold being discounted at all. None. Don't Chase. Yeah, you went to the theater. Okay, I did actually go to the movies last night. My sister and I took my mom to the new Downton Abbey. Yep. We went and saw the new Downton Abbey. Those movies are shot beautifully. So we went and saw that. Dark Wolf, Lou, you checked that out? Oh, that last episode, number 3, and then number 4, twist, and then twist again. Yeah, really good. Okay, so Bot's giving everyone a heads up that Thinkorswim has rolled the futures contracts to the December or the Z contract. Now remember, there is a window between the actual expiration, which happens Friday, and the fact that the contracts, I call it a pit date, because that's when the pit would roll. So the pit date has happened, meaning we've moved to December, but the U contract, the September contract, is still open. And if you're using the hourly price movement ranges, which are what we make probably, I'm guessing, better than half of our trades based upon the volatility that we look at for each hour of the day for each symbol that we're looking to potentially trade, please make sure I'm going to use that continuous contract. So I'm not going to denote the U or the Z on my chart, and I'll still continue to trade U. There's still a lot of volume there, but you'll see the open interest, the number of contracts that are open for that symbol are migrating out to December. But come Friday, that contract will be over, and you'll see the continuous contract on my screen. So yes, contract rolls are in effect, and December, or that Z, is the new index, the new front month for the index. But doesn't mean September's done yet, right? Doesn't mean September's done yet. All right, let's see. Next up is, where are the indices this morning? Well, we have this big gap that's due in Tesla. We're going to see that this morning. $1 billion of stock bought by Elon Musk, and that is going to land in the S&P and Q because of the weighting of Tesla, and most definitely in the XLY. You'll see the gap in consumer discretionary because Tesla is the number 2 weighted stock in that group. All right, so that's something else that we'll be keeping an eye on. And that should take, especially the NASDAQ, to some degree higher. But for the S&P, we'll have to look at those sectors that the S&P shares with the Dow, things like financials, healthcare, to see if that tech strength is going to impact beyond the NAS. Now the NAS is up. Obviously you can see that Sunday gap. NAS is up in a big way. Actually, all the indices are, including the Russell, which has nothing to do with Tesla. But generally, we have some risk appetite going into the rate cut. Obviously, the gap up in a high concentration weighted stock, not Tesla alone, gang. Remember, when we think about Tesla, it's heavily weighted, but not that heavily weighted, right? So let me show you what I mean. A lot of times there's a little bit too much hyperbole around the weighting of certain stocks. So let's go look at the NASDAQ QQQ. And if you look at the holdings in the NAS, is Tesla important? Yeah, but is it as important as Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, Broadcom, Amazon, Meta, or Google? No, it's pretty much weighted similar to Google. You can see here the Class A. And by the way, that's usually why I look at Goog L and not Goog. And then you look at the difference, it's sometimes 2 and 3% difference. So what happens is when a lower weighted but important stock in terms of weighting has a big price jump, that scant 3% all of a sudden is met with, in this case, a significant gap, and Tesla can help the overall index higher. But it's not a super high concentration weighted name. If you look at the rest of this group, Goog, Netflix, Costco, Palantir, T-Mobile, Cisco, AMD. So huge move in a somewhat high weighted stock, but nowhere near as impactful as, say, the top 3 or 4, right? I mean, Broadcom is twice the weight in the NASDAQ as Tesla. So keep those things in mind. All right, moving on to what we want to do here this morning. All right, so what are we looking at pre-market? We're looking at strength. Period. We're looking at strength. That means that I want to look for long calls. I want bullish setups, right? I definitely want bullish setups in line with the strongest sectors. I'm not looking to fade anything. I'm not looking to short anything when we're this far above and quite nicely above the previous session close. All 4 of the indices are above that previous session close, that PSC. So you want to keep an eye on that as well. All right. So as we start to filter, I'm going to make a concerted effort to make sure that when we talk about our trading, we're not ever going to the markets, right? There's a NASDAQ, S&P, Dow, Russell. There's energies, there's treasuries, there's metals, right? There's crypto. The markets is really a non-starter. It doesn't exist. So you want to be specific about the index, specific about the sector, specific about the stock. And yes, the stock market generally is up today. We see crude oil's up. We see bonds are up. We see gold is up as well. So I'm not ruling out any of those, but it looks like the indices are going to be the best bet for our filtering. So first of all, Tesla is 3%, as you talked about, of the NASDAQ. And if you're wondering, Rob, what is Tesla in terms of weighting in the S&P? All right, great question. If you're curious, how much of an impact do we see there? And if you go to the S&P holdings, it's 1.85%, right? So make sure that you remember that, yeah, it's almost 2%. It's almost as much as Google and Goog, but its impact today is really more based on the price move that it's actually making. Yeah. All right. So we're going to be looking for bullishness, mostly the ES and NAS. And maybe the S&P. Now, if I'm going to focus on the S&P, I'd like to see if I want to trade ES, right? It will be as long as the Dow is above basically 42.6. I'd like 46.2, sorry, 46,200. And the previous session close is 45,852. That's what I'm looking at for the most part in terms of what we'll do for day trades this morning. All right, well, if the XLY is up, again, thank you, Tesla. The next thing I'm going to look for is Amazon. Right, I'm going to look at Amazon. Now, this one's a bit of a bummer, but this isn't Amazon's strength in a lot of ways, right? This is Amazon getting carried higher by the NAS, by the consumer discretionary sector, and largely that's going to be led by Tesla. That's the cylinder of this motor that's firing. So bummer that we're up here because we had that position in Amazon. Some of you might be in it, but I imagine no. So I sent out the Friday recap. We'll keep an eye on that Friday recap. But ultimately, do we want to be bearish? Oh gosh, no, right? We've seen a lot of volatility, even within the context of trends. And if you're wondering, Rob, we have trends. Why is the follow through so difficult? It's the volatility in the trends that we're really still continuing to see. Now, a natural question is, do we want to day trade Tesla? Now, there's a couple ways to day trade Tesla. Tesla can be a spendy option. Be an option, spendy option contract, especially today. But TSLL is a great alternative for those of you that say, you know what, Rog, I've done my budgeting. I've used the position sizing guide that we make available in the Sector Secrets Mastery, and I'm just not budgeted for Tesla. So what do? TSLL. We're not going to go out of the money. We're not going to go really close in terms of expiration date in an effort to make Tesla affordable. We're going to focus on the alternative to Tesla. So Amazon's continuing to move higher. Now let's go take a look at Apple and Microsoft and NVIDIA. Again, all above the previous session close. Gaps can be difficult because what it is during a time that only Forex and futures traders were able to access the market, so to speak, right? Access the futures, access gold, treasuries, all those things that we kind of remember is the market. The market is energies, currencies, treasuries, metals, indices, right? Softs, grains, meats, it's all these things, crypto. So generally speaking, when any sector, when any stock, when any index, anything moves higher before the bell, there's going to be a huge number of traders that are not able to access it. Now, interestingly enough, NVIDIA is below the previous session close. So I want nothing to do with that. Microsoft's trying to get above the previous session close. What about Google? Google's moving very nicely. I would be absolutely open to a position in Google if it were to continue higher. Totally fine with that. Okay. Totally fine with that. And then if I'm looking at the overall, if I'm looking at Meta, yeah, see, I don't like Meta because if there is a setup in Meta, the buy of the HPMR, the buy of the Darvis is going to be below the previous session close. So thank you, but no thank you. AMD, hey there, good morning, Jeremy. So if I look at AMD, yeah, I would end up below the previous session close. And I'd rather focus on things that are going to be above the previous session close, right? So I could look at other stocks within semiconductors and say, hey, what are semis doing today? Not much. They're pretty heavy. So you notice that when a low weighted stock is having a big move, it doesn't necessarily mean that everything else is going to benefit, right? It's that one stock is having a good day and it's going to help the indices move higher based on the percentage and the price movement, but not everything really cares about a stock buyback, right? Is that inherently bullish to everything? No. It's not news that is more widespread than Tesla itself and stocks specific to that niche, that industry that would move with Tesla. So yeah, it's below. I agree, Jeremy. So I'm going to pass on that because we've kept, keeping that strict previous session close guideline rule, if you will, has been very good. Has been, frankly, let's just say it for what it is. It's been profitable. We had 4 day trades from Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I think 4 or 5 cumulatively, all above the previous session close. And it's been a good rule to keep. So I'm going to stay as strict to that as I can. And if there is a very aggro trade, I will note it as such. And we'll see if there's other things that would keep us open to a below the previous session close. Yeah. All right. What else do we have here? Well, Dow is not benefiting from Tesla, not in any way. And here at 937, let's talk about the sectors. Are there any sectors in uptrends? No sectors, including XLY. So you can see how limited a low concentration weighted stock is. There's no sectors are in uptrends. Actually, no sectors are in downtrends either, but we're interested in the uptrends. However, bullish sectors, meaning the Momo read on our labels, are tech, communication, financials. We can take a look at financials. Healthcare looks like it might be turning into a downtrend. Okay. Regional banks and metals and mining. So those are the bullish sectors. And it looks like here, XLV is going to be embracing that downtrend. Here's XLV. XLI, IYT, not looking too good. So if I'm going to look at anything in the Dow gang, I'm going to stick with, and DMAC, thanks for the GE mention. So GE is going to have to work really hard. Neutral sector, but above the previous session close. So unless I can get a trigger in GE that is above the previous session close, and also a Darvis, or if it happens to turn into a trend, which it's trying, the wave should turn on, right? So if anything, we can look at GE. It does have an uptrend, but it's going to have to work kind of hard because I'm going to show you the Dow in a moment. It will have to work harder as or whatever I've typed there. My typing has not realized it's Monday and not Sunday. To work harder because the Dow is testing the previous session close. So it's a little weak. We could look at Uber. We could look at a number of things in that group for sure. But again, I want to stick with that previous session close as best we can. Yeah. So great ideas to look at. GE is definitely not a no. Uber would be a no. Uber would be a no. Yeah. Okay. So let's get through. It might make sense to wait for the first 30 minutes to see just how long the Tesla strength lasts. Because remember, gang, it's a stock buyback, right? It's a stock buyback. And one of the things we want to remember about a stock buyback is that it's not necessarily bullish news about anything other than the stock being bought, not some sort of news out of Tesla as far as a company goes. Yeah, so if you're looking at TSLL right now, or Tesla, let's do this. And I tend to like to trade TSLL, mainly because Tesla can be so darn expensive. But if you wanted to look at Tesla and you're looking at the 4, let's see, you'd be looking at the September 19 for either 415 or 420 calls. And these are $1,200 and $1,400 a pop, right? Because of that gap up. So TSLL might be a good way to go, but I'm not super bullish on Tesla. I mean, yes, it's gapped up, and I would look for some support. So it's not a bad way to look. Let's see what TSLL has. See what we got here. TSLL for 419 is basically syncing up with the 15 strike on TSLL. And the 15 strike, yeah. Is that correct? No. Hang on. It's a little bit 19 strike. Yeah. 19 strike. And remember, gang, if you're looking at the trends, if you're looking to see what sectors are trending, take a look at screen number 2. All right, take a look at screen number 2, because that's what I'm looking at in order to determine what's in a trend. So communications are in a trend. So that's the Meta Google part of our world. We might have to take a look at XLC. So we'll take a look at TSLL. We'll take a look at XLC. I want to keep an eye on GC. Remember, we do have that Barrick position as well, which I'll talk about at 9:45, our newest position in related to gold, but not gold itself. So we'll keep an eye on that. So this is what we're dealing with here this morning. So let's get to work and see what, if anything, is going to meet our criteria for a day trade. But I've got my eye on Tesla for sure, and then we'll scan XLC after that. All right.